Hi there, Jessica Cano from LoseTheBackPain.com with my second sciatica video in this series. In today's video, I'm going to be discussing treatments for sciatica, what works, what doesn't, and why. Let's go ahead and jump in. First, what doesn't work? If you've been suffering for any more than a week or two, you've probably tried several things already. If you've been suffering for years or decades, like many people have, you've probably feel like you've tried it all. So some of this is probably old hat for you, if you will. But let's just quickly roll through it. Most of the treatments that people who are suffering from sciatica undergo are geared towards addressing the symptoms, not the cause. So that's the first problem. So NSAIDs, which are non-steroidal anti-inflammatory medications, muscle relaxants, electrical stimulation, ultrasound. So a lot of these things, again, while they may have their place, they're typically only going to give you temporary, if any, relief at all. And the biggest issue with them is they are not addressing the underlying cause. You know, the reason you have sciatica is not because you're not taking muscle relaxants before. It's not because you weren't getting electrical stimulation. Again, so these things aren't coming close to touching the cause, and that's where you really got to focus. You've got to identify the cause. It determines what treatments are going to work best for you. A little refresher on what causes sciatica. There are four primary conditions that can trigger a sciatica flare-up. The biggest and most common is piriformis syndrome, and that's where pressure is placed on the nerve by the piriformis muscle. Next most common is a herniated or bulging disc. Then there's also spinal stenosis and spondylolisthesis. So these are the four conditions that can cause sciatica. There are a couple others, but these are the four most common. But really, what are the things that cause these conditions? So for instance, what causes piriformis syndrome? That's the real question. And so the things that are the underlying causes of all these conditions are muscle imbalances, trigger points, negative emotions and stress, and nutritional deficiencies. And we're going to cover these in a little bit more detail as we go on throughout this video, as well as in other videos that I've already created and will in the future. But just a quick overview here. Muscle imbalances, when you have one muscle group or one muscle overpowering the opposing muscle group. So a very easy example here for you could be the bicep. Okay, if you take the bicep, it's the muscle that pulls your lower arm up towards your face. Okay, the tricep, the opposing muscle, is on the back side of your upper arm, and it straightens your arm back out. Okay, if the bicep is overdeveloped and overpowers the tricep, your arm will always stay in a bent position, and it'll be difficult for you to straighten that arm fully. And that's typically what you see with the bodybuilder type in a lot of the gyms and weight rooms and health clubs, always doing biceps, not doing triceps. But the effect this has on your body, beyond the bicep, tricep, and its effect on your arm and elbow, is that it's happening every day throughout your body, everywhere from the head all the way down to the ankles and toes and in the feet. So muscle imbalances are seldom talked about, but are the biggest factor when it comes to any type of ache, pain, or injury. Trigger points, again, again, each of these points here could have their own video, and again, we do have many videos on these topics, but a quick summary of trigger points is: trigger point is a place in a muscle that is easily irritated, can cause direct pain right in that location, as well as referred pain in another part of your body. Trigger points are also something that can cause sciatica. So for instance, trigger points can be causing flare-up in the piriformis muscle, and the piriformis muscle then putting pressure on the sciatic nerve, and so on. Negative emotions and stress. Again, people tend to pretend that this is not a factor. It's a huge factor. And one quick example is negative emotions and inability to deal with stress affects your blood circulation. Okay, and if your blood is not circulating properly and your body energy is not circulating properly, you're going to have problems. And sciatica is just one example. Nutritional deficiencies. Your body can't heal. First of all, your body can't heal and recover from any inflammation or injuries that you currently have if you're deficient in various enzymes, vitamins, minerals, and so on. But also, you can even create physical issues as a direct result of a nutritional deficiency. And again, I'll cover that in more detail throughout this video and in other videos. Okay, so let's go ahead and move on. We're going to go into our first example here, and that's piriformis syndrome. Again, piriformis syndrome occurs when there's an imbalance between the muscles of the hip. Typically, it's the hip rotator muscles. And what happens is the sciatic nerve runs typically behind that piriformis muscle. And you can see here in this picture, hopefully, where the nerve comes out from behind that muscle and then comes out over top of some of the other muscles. Now, what happens is any inflammation of the piriformis muscle or any tightening or shortening of the piriformis muscle starts to clamp down on that nerve. That's why sciatica is so common. And this is why piriformis is typically the number one cause of sciatica. The treatment that most piriformis syndrome cases respond best to is muscle balance therapy. Obviously, if the cause is muscle imbalances, well, balance those muscles back out and the pain goes away. Additional treatments that can help are trigger point therapy, far infrared heat, the use of topical pain relief creams, natural anti-inflammatory products or nutritional supplements, and also things like acupuncture, sports or relaxation massage. Got to be careful with the massage because you have to have a therapist who really knows you and your body and what they're doing. But those are just a couple examples of additional treatments that can be very beneficial. All right, example 2, bulging and or herniated disc. Again, discs bulge for a reason, not just out of the blue like most people tend to believe, but discs deteriorate over time due to a lack of hydration, nutritional deficiencies we discussed a little bit earlier, poor blood flow and circulation to the spine, and the biggest factor is really uneven, unnecessary wear and tear on the spinal column, the vertebrae, and the discs, but in particular excessive compression and torsion. And so that's a twisting and smushing down on those discs. That's the major culprit. So as far as treatments go, the treatments that most people with herniated or bulging discs respond best to is inversion therapy, because that's decompressing the spine, and then muscle balance therapy, which is getting the spine back into more of a normal alignment and also helping to maintain the space that the inversion creates. One of the things people don't realize is inversion by itself is good, but the tight muscle imbalances and the tight muscles that are pulling and creating that excessive compression and torsion to begin with on your spine are likely still there. And so that's why inversion therapy coupled with muscle balance therapy is a really powerful combination. Again, other things that can help are dietary changes, far infrared heat, the use of natural anti-inflammatory herbs, vitamins, and supplements. All right, example 3, spinal stenosis. Again, spinal stenosis is a narrowing of the spinal canal. It's typically due to weak spinal ligaments, calcification, and calcification is primarily caused by a nutritional imbalance and deficiencies in proteolytic enzymes, the enzymes that are typically responsible for maintaining and breaking down excess fibrous buildup in the body. And treatment, what we've found is people with spinal stenosis respond best to proteolytic enzyme therapy, far infrared heat, and the reason far infrared heat is because it's very deep penetrating. Unlike a traditional heating pad that only heats your skin, the far infrared heat is deep penetrating into your body, all the tissues and the organs, and in this case into the spine. Dietary changes, again, if you can just get a hair more space in that spinal canal, it could be enough to take the pressure off the nerve. And then obviously muscle balance therapy to strengthen any weak ligaments and bring a little bit more proper spinal alignment and maintain that proper spinal alignment. And example 4, spondylolisthesis. Again, this occurs when a vertebrae slip out of place. Typically, you'll have a vertebrae slipping back and putting pressure on the spinal canal, therefore putting pressure on the one or multiple nerves. The major factors tend to be here, or major causes tend to be muscle and ligament weakness or imbalances, overuse. So people who do road cycling, for hours and hours at a time, every day or many times per week for 30 years. Being hunched over in that bad position creates some really major muscle imbalances. And again, that's just one example. There's other examples. As far as treatments go, muscle balance therapy, again, is always going to be helpful here when you have these imbalances. Natural anti-inflammatory to decrease the inflammation and the pain. Far infrared heat to promote healing as well as decrease pain. And possibly prolotherapy to help strengthen the weak ligaments. So those are four quick examples about the conditions that cause sciatica, but don't forget that the conditions are just one piece. You got to go one step deeper or one step before that and identify and address the actual causes, which are, again, muscle imbalances, trigger points, nutritional deficiencies, and the inability to handle negative stress and emotions, or just excessive negative stress and emotions. All right, so hopefully you're noticing a trend. Muscle imbalances, as I had said earlier, are one of the biggest factors. It's something you've got to address. You've got to be aware of it. You've got to identify where you're out of balance and work on correcting and improving those. Again, like I said also earlier, it doesn't take a lot of improvement to take pressure off the nerve and the pain goes away. I mean, it could be a hair improvement and pain's gone. Okay, so if you implement some of what we've talked about here today, again, it doesn't take a lot. So the good news is also almost everything I've talked about as far as these treatments go can be done on your own by yourself. Okay, you don't need to go to a doctor. You don't need to have surgery. And again, typically things like surgery aren't going to be the answer long term. That's why so many people who do have surgeries have to have repeat surgeries. Okay, if you have a herniated or bulging disc and you have it surgically operated on, they may remove the piece of offending disc material that's putting pressure on the nerve, but what caused that disc to bulge and herniate in the first place? Those factors are still there. You're going to have it again. Okay, so don't, I'm not saying don't have surgery, but before you have surgery, strongly think about what I'm saying here. And I just hate to hear of people having multiple surgeries, especially if it could be avoided. So identify and address the underlying causes, as we talked about before, and you will get results. How quickly, I don't know, but most people get results pretty quickly. Here's a story. Benny Crane from Chicago, Illinois, a client of ours, and he bought our Lose the Back Pain system, which is a program where we teach you how to identify and address your muscle imbalances in the comfort of your own home. And for him, immediately, that day, he was able to feel improvement. And we've got hundreds of stories just like this. Now, I can't guarantee that you'll be able to get relief in one day, but I can guarantee that you will get relief. You will see improvement. And how can I say such a, or make such a bold claim? Because we've got thousands, actually tens of thousands of customers in over 100 different countries around the world who've used the treatments that I've talked about today to get relief. It just works, okay? And it works better than everything else because it makes sense. And hopefully, what I've shared with you tonight makes sense to you. You can learn more about the treatments I've discussed. You can learn more about these conditions, as well as take advantage of additional free videos on our website, which is www.losethebackpain.com. Again, my name is Jesse Canone from the Healthy Back Institute. Hope you found this helpful, and I look forward to hearing from you soon.